Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of this show. What is today? Today is Martin Luther King's Day, the Martin Luther King holiday, and I had a great time today. Earlier today, we went out there to do our march here in Houston, Texas. We had a great march with everybody out there and everybody doing their thing. It was excellent. I hope you guys, for those of you who didn't go to any marches, for those of you who didn't do anything specifically, that you at least used your time to recharge, because there is a lot to this holiday. You know, of course, there are a lot of folks that aren't too particular about celebrating the holiday, but it is something that I think, well, to each his own. Anyway, we had a great time this morning, and then we got back here and started to get this show put together. And I always knew that I was going to do something special for this show, because I am, to put it bluntly, and by the way, I just want to let you guys know that we while we don't have our telephone systems hooked in perfectly with the mixer, we are going to be taking telephone calls today on the show, so that I want folks to call in, and we should be taking phone calls going forward. The telephone number is 646-716-5812. Again, that is 646-716-5. Let's back up. 646-716-5812. And I want you to call. This is an interactive show. I want you guys to be a part of it. Now, as we said, today is Martin Luther King's Day, and here's the deal. And I don't mean this to be blasphemous or anything of that nature, but I was never a Martin Luther King fanatic for one specific and only one reason, and that I was never completely convinced that the model of making folks beat the hell out of you for a peaceful change is long lasting. That was something that I just couldn't fathom. I just couldn't believe that simply being a non-violent person, when violence is exerted upon one, to maintain that method to achieve something. I just couldn't see it. I'll be frank. To date, I still don't completely see it. I understand it. I understand the results. I understand how successful it was thus far. But I was happy to read an old post at Daily Kos. Well, before I get into that, let's officially do work with the way the program should be worked on. It's Martin Luther King's Day, and let's give it its due. So I'll start it this way and say that I have a lot of respect for Martin Luther King. For a very long time, I had some misgivings, some very strong misgivings about his tactics, however. To be frank, I still have a few problems with it to this day. The reality, however, is that I was schooled. And one of the very important thing I think one has to be cognizant of, one has to understand that even though they may have strong feelings about something, if somebody provides an alternative opinion or somebody, you don't have to necessarily change your opinion if your opinions were fact-based, if your opinion was based on quite a few good things. But sometimes listening to what somebody else has to say, and sometimes, most of the times, listen to what somebody else has to say, can help you either change your opinion or better inform your opinion or modify your opinion. So anyhow, I still have a few problems I still have a few problems with it to this day. The reality, however, is that I was schooled by an article by HamdenRice of the Daily Kos. I get it. And for the first time, the blog of the week will be someone else's words. Now, his blog is pretty long, so I don't intend to sit back and necessarily read the entire blog, but I'll interpret some of the blog. I'll read some of the blog from Mr. HamdenRice from the Daily Kos, who's done this. This blog is, I just realized it was a pretty old blog. And how did I find this blog? One of my friends at Starbucks said, hey, if you want to talk about something sometime, check out this blog post that I found at Daily Kos. This is a good friend at Starbucks, and they know what I do, and they decided to go for it. So for the first time, the words from the blog of the week won't be my own. It will be someone else's. However, I will share this with you. Now, folks, I want to tell you something else. Please remember, what we bring here at Politics Done Right is alternative news. We also bring fact-based news, fact-based opinion, but we also bring news that the mainstream media won't cover. We also bring all these politicians together. We're going to bring in quite a few politicians subsequently running across the country. We're going to bring progressive politicians that don't normally get their message aired anywhere. So what we'll do is we'll bring them in here and we'll promote them through our own channels, and our own channels include you. So therefore, a big ask of you, please remember to share these programs, because these programs are going to be substantive. These programs are going to bring folks to you that you haven't heard of. These programs are going to bring alternative opinions. These programs are going to shame a lot of what the mainstream media is doing or not covering. So I'm asking you to let's go ahead and share this. And remember, this is a call-in show, so please, if you're at a telephone, if you're on Skype, give us a call, 646-716-5812. 646-716-5812. And believe me, I am very nice to you when you call.
Telephone, if you're on Skype,
and
give us a call, 646-716-5812.
That's what happens when you have all these computers running at the same time and you hit one of those buttons that you shouldn't hit. You get to realize that, oh my God, Facebook is actually not in real time. But anyhow, so please, folks, if you're listening right now, share, and let's go ahead and make sure that these things are out there. Anyhow, what are your thoughts about this subject that we're going to talk about with MLK? What are your thoughts? Let's talk. If you are sending a tweet, remember to use hashtag Politics Done Right. And I want to ask you to follow Egberto Willies on Twitter. EGBERTOWILLIES on Twitter. Egberto Willies on Twitter. I want to hear from you. I want to keep up from you. Whenever we post a new blog, a tweet goes out there, and we hope for you to respond to that tweet and let us know, hey, I like this. I want to go ahead and retweet this. Or you can, hey, some people have come back and say, my God, where are you coming from? I don't agree with you. And we can then start our Twitter dialogue or Facebook dialogue or Instagram dialogue or whatever. You can find me in all these places, Egberto Willies on Instagram, Egberto Willies on Twitter, and on Facebook, of course, you can reach us at Politics Done Right. Just look up Politics Done Right, and you have it, my friend, and you have it. Anyhow, so what am I trying to do today? Today I want to talk about Martin Luther King. Yes, I do love Martin Luther King. Yes, I do respect Martin Luther King. And by the way, I love all people. All people. But humans have a tendency, based on social constructs, to harm other humans. And my goal in life, one of my goals in life, is to help mitigate the fallacies that create that. When, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I just had a problem with passive resistance while you're getting the hell beaten out of you. And then when this blog was turned on to me, I remember an argument that I had with my father. My father, rest in peace, I lost him about 6 years ago or so, suddenly. But I am originally from Central America, Panama. The United States came into Panama, built a canal. Many Panamanians worked for the canal. The same crap that occurred in the United States with the silver and gold and the water fountains and all of that, in the 10 strip of land they controlled throughout the Panama, those same tenets applied. So we saw back in Panama where there were two school systems, one for the Panamanians, which meant one for the people of color, and one for Americans, which really meant mostly white people. And of course, however, there were a few, because there were militaries in Panama, etc. You had a few black folks in the military there that they went to the schools. They're even back in the 70s, 80s, etc., etc., etc. But what was harmful was the difference in the school systems. The materials that the school systems received were all different. We got the substandard housing when living in a canal zone. In fact, a whole lot of folks like us who lived in the canal zone, who worked for the American government, also had homes in Panama proper, meaning not in the canal zone, because again, homes were substandard, and we can go through a whole lot of other issues. The school system, the material that they got for the school systems were non-standard. The same crap that occurred in the United States, they permeated right there in the canal zone. And I remember when our civic leaders back there went, and some of them came to Congress here in the United States to fight for how the Panamanians are being treated on the canal zone, and all of that got taken care of in the long run. And just before I came to the United States, they had integrated the American schools and the Panamanian schools. And I tell you, I just want to make one thing. In as much as the schools were of substandard quality comparatively, the education by the Panamanian teachers in Panama, in our Panamanian schools, were so good that when we transferred from those schools, remember, these people didn't want us there because we spoke differently, etc., etc., etc. When we went from those schools back to the American schools, the first year, my class, which comprised the very first complete graduating year, took the first 14 places. We took the first 14 places. I mean, that's not to say that the Panamanian kids were more intelligent than the American kids. What it meant is that the Panamanian kids, the teachers, the parents, prepped us in such a manner that said, you guys have to go out there and work twice as hard and prove yourself. And by God, we did it. I digress. Now, I got into a discussion with my father when he came to the United States, when he came to visit me one year. And we were talking about America, and I really got mad at him. And I said a lot of the problems we even had in Panama had to do with all you guys, including you, Dad, that just didn't stand up for yourself, just didn't go out there and fought. Get your heads cracked open if necessary. And he looked at me and he said, well, you know, a lot of times I wanted to do that. And then he got mad and he said, but to put it bluntly, if I had done that, the engineer that you are today, you probably would not have been. That you were able to go over here to the United States and go to college, maybe you would not have been able to do that. And I stopped for a minute and I said, oh, you know what? That is right. So I said to my old man, you know, I'm sorry, you're actually right on that point. But to MLK, does the same pass apply when you're running a movement to make a change? Does that really apply as well? I've thought about that several times. You know, there's Malcolm X who said, you know, if you hit me, I hit you back. If you hit me 10 times, I hit you 20 times. I thought about that. I thought about the way the United States operates in general. In other words, how does the United States operate? If the United States tells somebody what to do, or somebody wrongs the United States does not come back and say, well, you wronged me, let me turn the other cheek. They send some Tomahawk missiles, they send the military, and what they say is the reason we do that is we do that to ensure that you don't think we're weak or do it again. Turns out this post had a same type of discussion that I had with my dad, and he said as follows. He said, I was having an argument with my father about Martin Luther King and how his message was too conservative compared to Malcolm X's message. My father got really angry at me. It wasn't that he disliked Malcolm X, but his point was that Malcolm X hadn't accomplished anything as had Dr. Martin Luther King. I was kind of sarcastic and asked something like, so what did Martin Luther King accomplish other than giving us, I have a dream? I have a dream. Before I tell you what my father told me, I want to digress. And he goes in to explain the type of upbringing that they had. So he then said, my father told me, or rather, let's back up. Before I tell you what my father told me, I want to digress. Because at this point in our amnesiac national existence, my question pretty much reflects the national civic religion view of what Dr. King accomplished. He gave this great speech, or some people say he marched. I was so angry at Mrs. Clinton during the primaries when she said that Dr. King marched, but it was LBJ who delivered the Civil Rights Act. At this point, I would like to remind everyone exactly what Martin Luther King did. And it wasn't that he marched or gave a great speech. And as you see from the title of the program today, is most people don't really understand what Martin Luther King did. My father told me, this is the blogger talking, my father told me with a sort of cold fury, Dr. King ended the terror of living in the South. And he continues, please let this sink in and take my word and the word of my late father on this. If you are a white person who has always lived in the United States and never under a brutal dictatorship, you probably don't know what my father was talking about. But this is what the great Martin Luther King accomplished. Not that he marched, nor that he gave speeches. He ended the terror of living as a black person, especially in the South. I'm guessing that most of you, especially those having come from fresh or seen the help, may not understand what this was all about. But living in the South and in parts of the Midwest and in many ghettos of the North was living under terrorism. Under terrorism. It wasn't that black people had to use a separate drinking fountain or couldn't sit at lunch counters or had to sit in the back of the bus. That was minor. You really must disabuse yourself of this idea. Lunch counters and buses were crucial symbolic planes of struggle that the civil rights movement used to dramatize the issue. But the main suffering in the South did come from our inability to drink from the same fountain right in the front of the bus or eat lunch at the counter. It was that white people, mostly white men, occasionally went berserk and grabbed random black men, usually men, and lynched them. You all know about lynching, but you may forget or not know that white people also randomly beat black people and that black people could not fight back for fear of even worse punishment. The constant low-level dread of atavistic violence is what kept the system running. It made life miserable, stressful, and terrifying for black people. White people also occasionally tried black people, especially black men, for crimes for which they could not conceivably be guilty. With the willing participation of white women, they often accused black men of assault, which could be anything from rape to not taking off one's hat to reckless eyeballing. Remember Emmett Till. This is going to sound awful and perhaps a stain, this is what he's saying, on my late father's memory. But when I was little, before the civil rights movement, my father taught me many humiliating practices in order to prevent the random terroristic berserk behavior of white people. The one I remember most is that when walking down the street in New York City side by side, hand in hand with my hero father, if a white woman approached on the same sidewalk, I was to take off my hat and walk behind my father because he had been taught in the South that black males, for some reason, were supposed to walk single file in presence of any white lady. This was just one of many humiliating practices we were taught to prevent white people from going berserk. I remember a huge family reunion one August with my aunts and uncles and cousins gathered around my grandparents' vast breakfast table laden with food from the farm, and the state troopers drove up to the house with a car full of rifles and shotguns, and everyone went kind of weirdly blank. They put on the mask that black people used back then to not provoke white berserkness. My strong, valiant, self-educated, articulate uncles, whom I adored, became shuffling, stepping, fetch it to avoid provoking the white men. Fortunately, the troopers were only looking for an escaped convict. Afterward, the women, my aunts, were furious at the humiliating performance of the men, the decimation of man, the virtual castration is what I call it, of those incidents that happened in those times, and said something that a child can understand. This is the climate of fear that Dr. Martin Luther King ended. If you didn't get taught such things, let alone experience them, I caution you against invoking the memory of Dr. King as though he belongs exclusively to you and not primarily to African Americans. The question is, how did Dr. King do this? And of course, he didn't do it alone. Of all the civil rights leaders who helped Dr. King in this reign of terror, I think most underappreciated is James Farmer, who I'm not aware of, who founded the Congress of Racial Equality and was a leader of nonviolent resistance and taught practices nonviolent resistance. So what did they do? They told us, whatever you are most afraid of doing vis-a-vis white people, go do it. Go ahead down to City Hall and try to register to vote. Even if they say no, even if they take your name down, go ahead at the lunch counter, sue the local school board. All things that most black people would have said back then without exaggeration were stark, raving insane and would get you killed. Go do it anyway. They made black people experience the worst of the worst collectively that white people could dish out, and discover that it wasn't that bad. They taught black people how to take a beating from the southern cops, from police dogs, from fire department hoses. They actually coach young people how to crouch, cover their heads with their arms, and take the beating. They taught people how to go to jail, which terrified most decent people. They taught them how to do that. And you know what? The worst of the worst, it wasn't all that bad. It was tough, but it wasn't all that bad. Once people had been beaten, had dogs sicked on them, had fire hoses sprayed on them, and been thrown in jail, you know what happened? These magnificent young black people began singing freedom songs in jail. That, my friends, is what ended the terrorism in the South. Confronting your worst fears, living through it, and breaking out in a deep-throated freedom song. The jailers knew they had lost when they beat the crap out of these young Negroes, and the jailed, beaten young people began to sing joyously. First in one town, then in another. This is what the writer James Baldwin captured like no other writer of the era. Please let this sink in. This is still a blog. Please let this sink in. It wasn't marches or speeches. It was taking a severe beating, surviving, and realizing that our fears were mostly illusory and that we were free. So yes, Dr. King had many other goals, many other more transcendent non-racial policy goals. Goals that apply to white people too, like ending poverty, reducing the warlike aspects of our foreign policy, promoting the New Deal goal of universal employment, and so on. But his main accomplishment, folks, his main accomplishment, as I said, was to end fear, reducing the warlike expert. So please don't tell me that Martin Luther King's dream has not been achieved unless you knew what racial terrorism was like back then and can make a convincing case you still feel today. And make a convincing case you can still feel today. That is what Dr. King did. Not march, not give a good speech. He crisscrossed the South organizing people, helping them not to be afraid. and encouraging them, like Gandhi did in India, to take the breath that they had been trying to avoid all their lives. Once the beating was over, we were free. It wasn't the Civil Rights Act or the Voting Rights Act or the Fair Housing Act that freed us. It was taking the beating and thereafter not being afraid. So sorry, Mrs. Clinton, as much as I admire you, you were wrong on this one. Our people freed ourselves, and those acts, as important as they were only white people officially recognizing that we had what we had done. I think this is one of the most powerful blogs that appeared on the Daily Kos. Folks, the telephone number 646-716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, not only the blog, but on my thoughts. But I want to partially, now that, first of all, I accept this blogger. I accept the reality that taking the beating that people took passively did strengthen black folks in the South, or black folks wherever they got beaten, to not fear the beating or not allow the fear of getting beat, the fear of getting thrown into jail, the fear of being killed, the fear of dogs being sick at you, not allowing that to prevent you from working on your voting rights and doing all these things to move ahead. But not fearing doing these things don't mean that you're then able to attain these things. And here are my concerns, or here's the thing that I constantly talk about. When I want to make sure and couch this correctly. I want to say this right so that it comes across appropriately. In as much as the black fear of being beaten when fighting for the things they want to gain, not having fought for it leaves the impression that your freedom in this case, your freedom to vote, your freedom to live wherever you want to live, your freedom to go to whatever school you want to go to, that leaves the impression on many's minds, the minds of many, that your freedom was given to you. And I think a lot of the backlash we have today, the reason you can have a Donald Trump, the reason you can have still a white supremacist movement, the reason you can still have white nationalists, is because they believe that there are some people undeserving in this country, because they believe it is them who gave you your freedom. And if it's them who gave you your freedom, it is them who can also take your freedom away. And I think that is a battle we're fighting. The nonviolence battle may have been, in my opinion, successful at one half. But I think what is more needed than anything else, or what was needed then than anything else, is for the oppressor not to sit back and believe that the ability to oppress was solely theirs. And that if they ever decide to oppress again, that they could. And I think that is where we're at. I think we're in a position now where there is a sect in this country, and it's not a small sect. It is all those people who think that the browning of America somehow is an existential threat to them. It's a stupid belief. It's a fallacy. It is something that many on the right are trying to push into the heads of many, because they want to have some ulterior gain. So they're using the gullibility of others. They're using the fear of others. And then they're using the racial social construct in a manner to have these people out against the other. And why do they want these people against the other? They need to have these people against the other so that the few who control the country won't have to fight. Won't have to fight for the true enemy of the people. The American plutocracy and unfettered capitalism that is that is sucking the blood out of the vast majority of Americans. So whether you're in the top 20% or in the bottom 20%, it's just doing it at a different level. It's just doing it at a different level. Just about every discussion that we have always drives back to this point. Folks, I have a whole lot of listeners and nobody deciding to use a telephone to call in. Telephone number again, 646. It's right there on the screen. I'd love to hear somebody's point of view. I don't care who you are, black, white, Chinese, whatever. Give me a call because I want to hear your point of view. Am I full of it? Do you think I'm maybe looking at it the wrong way? I would love to hear that, and others who are listening would love to hear that as well. 646. Don't fear. You know that's what we do here. We want to hear from folks. 646-716-5812. Don't fear calling, and I think it's working. We just kind of set this one up. We kind of got this one working today, so I don't see anybody calling it, but I would love to hear from some of you. If you'll just give us a call, 646-716-5812. So anyhow, that is the biggest, that has always been my concern with the nonviolent action of Martin Luther King. So let's postulate then. Suppose it wasn't a Martin Luther King. Suppose we took the stance of Malcolm X, and my theory has always been Martin Luther King got a whole more positive treatment for the fear that if we don't have Martin Luther King, we have the likes of Malcolm X. And what would the likes of Malcolm X be as far as well, it would have been quite different. The question is then, what kind of solutions would have occurred had the first time cops decided to beat the crap out of black folks who did nothing wrong, if those same black folks decided to now form posses and start knocking off those people who harmed them? I would be interested in finding that out. I have a call here, so let's go ahead and take the call. Okay, you're on the air. Who am I speaking to?
Joan Early, how are you?
All right, who am I speaking with?
Joan Early.
Come on in, Joan. Let me hear. Give me your thoughts.
I grew up in the South, Egberto, a little bit older than you are.
Yes, ma'am.
And I saw a lot of what you're talking about. And I just wanted to add to what you've already said, that slavery ended and it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It really didn't end because black people were dependent on whites for everything they got, their job, where they lived, their homes, the land they lived on, and that dependency kept them down.
Exactly.
They did raise up, they did protest, they did speak out. Many were killed, beaten, subjected to horrors I won't even go into, and in some cases did witness. What Martin Luther King did was to bring attention to something that many Americans at that time refused to accept, did not want to hear. This isn't happening. You're not oppressed. We treat you fine. And they did not. He brought attention to that, and he helped those blacks who wanted to stand up feel that they could. And they did, before and after Dr. King. They fought. I fought in my own way for voter
Right.
We marched, we protested, we spoke out, and I had a shotgun shoved in my face, which maybe I was a little too young and a little too determined and pig-headed to accept the fact that my life was in danger. I continued, as did many others, in those situations, making people listen when they didn't want to. If we got one word here, if we got one person registered, if we helped one person overcome their fear of what might happen if they went to vote, bear in mind that even though the same standards existed then for voting, you were still dependent upon the powers that be. We were not included in the staff or the volunteers as we are now on voting. A lot of our votes were thrown away. They were never heard. Our voices were never heard, and we kept going. We were relentless in our pursuit of our rights. We knew our rights. Another thing I wanted to point out, when you mentioned the education you received in your country, in the South, I was taught by Black teachers in a school that was all Black. We did not have the material, we did not have the fun classrooms and whatever that kids have now, but we learned,
Right.
just as you say you did, because those teachers made us learn. I mean, if there was an active brain cell in your head, they made you use it.
Exactly.
So there were a lot of things back then that were horrible. It made great people out of a lot of Blacks. It taught them to think. It taught them to be fearless. And yes, quite a few of them lost their lives for it. I'm researching now for my next book, which will be featuring many of the deaths in Mississippi for people who did stand up, for people who did protest, for people who, in some cases, just simply had a job and did not lower their heads when they were approached on the street by a white man. Many people lost their lives. Dr. King gave us a voice because more people listened to him. We were used to speaking out. We were used to pounding against the door, waiting for it to be open. He sort of taught us not to wait to break the sucker in. That's the difference I saw.
I love your commentary, Joan. I love your commentary. I have a question, though, like telling you that I do have mixed feelings because, again, just like you said, in as much as slavery ended, most Black folks, because of the structure of the system, was still dependent on the previous masters. Additionally, even during Martin Luther King, the fact that we simply turned the other cheek, as many who believe in the Bible would say. Could you turn down the other thing? I think it's kind of interfering a bit. But as you said before, it turns out that we have to ask the question is, given that we simply turned the other cheek and asked that somebody legislate our freedom, do you think that that is partially responsible for why many believe it is in their right, whether we have our rights, as opposed to it being as immutable as theirs is?
Well, in some ways, I agree. We were taught the Constitution just as everybody else was. We knew our rights. We knew what they were. We just lived in economic oppression that didn't allow us to do what we wanted to do or to speak as we wanted to speak. It made us bow down,
Right.
in order to get a paycheck, in order to feed our children. I remember so many people my book, The Other Two-Fifths, I cited quite a few instances in there where black men or black families lived on the land of their white
Former masters.
employers.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. And they would go and purchase supplies annually throughout the year, whatever they needed, and it was only the meager trappings of necessity. There was no luxury. We need food. I need sugar. I've got to go buy 5 pounds of sugar. And there was an account set up for them. At the end of the year, when crops were sold and they were paid, their bosses, owners, which was still the term that most of them felt, would always say, well, you owe me $400. And there was absolutely nothing they could do because
Right.
they knew doggone well they didn't owe that much. But if they said that, they not only lost their jobs, they lost the homes in which they lived.
Right.
There would be no way for them to provide for their families. So it was the economics that held us down. And I think right now, I hear so many people say, well, we haven't been slaves for a long time, so why haven't we accomplished more than we have? And that is an infuriating statement for somebody who lived it and saw it. And now I'm not old enough to have been way back there, but I was back far enough. I saw enough. I heard enough.
Joan,
I felt the angry eye jab.
that is a very important statement, and you kind of changed the subject on me. But I've got to cover what you just said because that's important. Why slavery has been over for a long time? Why is it that black folks or other enslaved minorities are still so behind, as if it was a character deficiency or some other deficiency? The reality is if you started on third base and everybody else started on first base, it's hard as hell to catch up with you, because in order to catch up with you, you are actually saying that that person must be better than you are. So think about that. If somehow black folks became on par with everybody else right now, it would in effect say they're that much better than everybody else to be able to make up with no advantages all that was lost because of slavery, because of Jim Crow, because of redlining, because of, we can go item after item, we can go after things today right now. So folks, be careful when you say that. If you ask the question, why aren't they on par? You're actually saying that you think that somehow they are better than you are because somehow they should be able to catch you with no benefits. Go ahead, Joan.
There's absolutely no way that we could have caught up.
Right.
There's no way to make up for that. How would you? You had no job. You still depended on those same people to pay you, to provide food for you, to provide a place for you to live. I am always amazed that so many blacks did as well as they did under those
Exactly.
conditions. And quite frankly, seeing the strides that were made with a foot on your neck makes me know that blacks truly are a strong group of people. There's no way we could have gotten through that. There's no way we could have even lived without mentioning achieving. We had knowledge that we were not allowed to use.
Right.
We learned to speak, but we were not allowed to do so. Speak correctly to that person that pays you the pittance they give you to live on.
Right.
Look at them. Look at them in the face and speak correctly and see what happens to you. I was called uppity and a few other names that I won't repeat. I was fired from my first job, which was babysitting a family's grandkids who came down for the summer, because the grandmother gave me a box of matches and a piece of rolled up newspaper and told me to light the paper and go burn the wasp nest that was in her garage. And I think I was maybe 13.
Right.
She said, just light this and go stick it to that wasp nest and get those wasps out of there. Well, I had sense enough to know if I had done that, I would have been covered in wasps.
Right.
And I was allergic to them. And I very politely, without hesitation, said, I'm very sorry, I can't do that. I'm allergic to wasp stains. And if I go in there, as you just said, I'm going to get stung. And she said, well, you do as I say, they're only wasps. And I said, okay, then you go do it. Somewhere inside of me, and I grew up in one of those families where people did stand up. And on another day with another subject, I'll go into greater detail on that.
Right.
But I could not allow myself to take direction that I knew would cause me harm. And of course, my grandmother received a phone call and said I was all those things that we will call basically, you don't know your place. You're told to do it, you do it. And my grandmother said, what made her say that? Joan doesn't do that. That's quite unusual. Tell me what happened. And she said, well, I wanted her to go torch this wasp nest. And my grandmother said, are you crazy?
Joan?
She's allergic to wasps, and even if she wasn't, she would have been harmed.
Exactly.
So we knew, we spoke out. We were, in a lot of cases, shut down. Just basically as if we were shackled.
Exactly.
Because we still were. Well, economically, we were still shackled.
Well, I wanted to have this show today on MLK, and especially when this friend of mine gave me that blog post, because more importantly than anything, I think, a lot of people don't like to have these types of conversations, and I think, I think had we had a whole lot of these conversations in the past, we wouldn't have a Trump, we wouldn't have the problems that we have today. But Joan Early, thank you so kindly for calling into the show today. Remember, we're back to a daily show, folks, and I want to hear from you all. Thank you very much, Joan.
Thank you as well.
Now, folks, let me tell you, we're about 11 minutes into the show, and there are a few other things that I want to talk about. But beforehand, I want to say that it is important that right now we're going through we are in 2018, and we're still going through these racial issues that make no sense. I don't know how much, if you read my blog at EgbertoWillies.com, I like to write a whole lot of things where we cover race sometimes. I never used to, as a blogger, early on in my blogging career, I never spoke about race. And the reason I never spoke about race in these times was because I never wanted to be read as a black blogger. I wanted to be read as an informed blogger. So I stayed away from the issues having to do with race. However, was that a good thing? The reality is, yes, it was a good thing, because it got me the necessary audience where I think I can reach people on the race issue from a very honest point of view. In other words, somebody that doesn't, as a lot of people like to talk about, play the race card and that sort of thing. So when I speak about race, for most of the people who follow me or know me now, they know it's not coming from that position of, using race to create an argument, but in effect, using race to educate, using race for us to go ahead and start moving forward. Why am I saying this? I think it is time that it's been time for us to genuinely discuss the stupidity of race, the ignorance of race, what we've allowed it to play in this country, around the world, etc. I think until we tackle that issue, we can talk of it from the position of privilege and white supremacy and all these items, from all these points of view. But the most important thing that I like to talk about race, where everybody can understand, white people, black people. Before I forget, folks, please do share these shows. This is how we get these other opinions, these other messages out, things that you likely won't hear on mainstream media, or things that people are scared to talk about. We will talk about it. Whether folks are scared about it or not, we will. But what I like to say about race is you're being used. White people, you're being used. Black people, you're being used. All these other people that when we talk race, it's all about using folks. Because you see those guys on top? You see Donald Trump, billionaire Donald Trump, or however many bucks he has. And you see Oprah Winfrey, and people are not going to like that because, Oprah Winfrey is everybody's doll. But all these folks of that class, the billionaire class, race doesn't mean a damn thing. And if for one time you think any of those billionaires are going to put the social construct change the social construct in such a manner that'll affect their wealth building potential or attempt to, that would actually redistribute their ill-gotten gains, you can forget it. Those of us, the middle class, the poor, the upper middle class, the somewhat millionaires, need to get with the program. Race is a construct being used today because the system has extracted so much from you, from everybody. And by the way, it has extracted more on a per capita basis from the other, but there's no more to extract from them. So they're coming to you. Hey, guys in Appalachia, all those people that continue to vote for the conservative Republicans, the right-wing Republicans who are telling you these stories, all those people that are continuing to vote these ways. And I must say this in this regard. The idea is to maintain your gullibility into thinking that the problem that you have somehow is a problem of the other. People that look like me, people that look like others. But that's not the problem. Look up to the problem. Folks that look like me have no power to move companies. Folks that look like me have no power to create drugs, to manufacture the drugs that are pilfering, that's decimating families in Appalachia. That's not where the power is. The power to create these drugs, the power to move these companies, the power to kill these jobs. None of these powers lie in the hands of those people who you are being taught to hate. So where should you be putting most of your angst? Where should you be putting most of the things that you fear? It's not those others, baby. Look up. Look at the plutocracy. Look at the people that control it all. And that is where you should put it. Folks, again, this is a call-in show. I hope, thank you very much, Joan Early, for giving us a call and with your eloquent articulation of what occurred in real America for quite a long time. I hope to start getting more calls. This is the first day that we started accepting calls here. We should have it better done next time when our mixer gets in. The number 646-716-5812 as shown there. But folks, do remember that this is a call-in show, and likewise, this is independent media. So something that I always tell my folks, independent media require your support. So please remember to give it your support when you get a chance. I have on the screen right now, if you want to support independent media and all the things that we're going to cover. Remember, we're going to be bringing in politicians quite frequently. We're also progressive politicians who intend to make a difference in your lives. That's what we intend to do. folks who are going to make a difference in your lives. We're also going to dispel some of the crap that you hear on mainstream media. We will do that. And we are also going to be what I call activist journalists. In other words, we will also be in the field with folks like Swing Left, Occupy, Black Lives Matter, Indivisible, Coffee Party USA, which we are on the Coffee Party Network right now. Please remember to visit coffeepartyusa.com. That's the network that we're on right now. So we intend to do all of this, and we need your support. So please, number one, please go ahead and share these videos widely. That is how we make change, for other people to see other commentary. Likewise, if you have the wherewithal, support independent media. Support us here, support elsewhere, because you know what? You're not going to get it from the mainstream media, because they have to support those who support them, the plutocracy. If you're the one supporting us, who do you think's interest gets taken care of? But anyhow, we're reaching the end of the show. Thank you so kindly for spending this time with me. We will do this again 5 days a week. The only time we'll miss is if, remember I said we're activist journalists as well. So if we're out there in the field and we can't get a signal to you to bring it live, and we got to be out of the studio, well, we may have to not have it live that day, but we'll have something for you to podcast, to vlogcast. So thank you so kindly for being with me. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have comments, send it to info@politicsdoneright.com. If you want to have, if you want us to cover things, info@politicsdoneright.com. If you have commentary, info@politicsdoneright.com. If you hate something that I've said, info@politicsdoneright.com, or even tweet me at Egberto Willies, #politicsdoneright. I take very well to criticisms if there's something you need to say, and I also take very well to compliments. So thank you so kindly for being a part. This is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and I am out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.